My name is Rowan Hale, and the night my 7-year-old son whispered those 12 words to me, something inside me cracked so quietly, it didn't make a sound. Mama, they ate at a restaurant while I waited in the car for 2 hours. I froze in the doorway, grocery bag slipping from my hand, apples rolling across the kitchen tiles like loose marbles. My ex-husband's taillights were still fading at the end of the street, red blinking through the fog like a warning I should have listened to years ago. Liam stood in front of me, backpack still on, arms wrapped tight around his tiny ribs the way he did whenever he felt unsafe.
He didn't cry. He didn't complain. He didn't even look angry.
He just said it in that soft, trembling voice children use when they've already decided they're the problem. I knelt so our faces were level. Sweetheart, you waited where? In the car, he whispered, eyes fixed on the floor.
He said I was making trouble. He said it was adults-only lunch.
So he locked the doors and said he'd bring me fries later. But he didn't. My heart splintered along old, familiar fault lines. This wasn't the first time Aaron had treated Liam like luggage he didn't want to carry. But 2 hours?
In a locked car? Alone?
While he sat inside a warm restaurant eating with her, his new girlfriend, the woman he'd replaced 12 years of marriage with. I inhaled slowly, the way my therapist taught me when panic tried to pull me under. Baby, did you tell him you were cold?
I said my hands hurt. And what did he say?
He said I should stop being dramatic, like you.
There it was. The knife. The twist.
The deliberate cruelty he could never resist. But the worst part, the part that hollowed my lungs, was Liam's expression.
He wasn't shocked. He wasn't even confused.
He said it like he believed it.
Like he thought he deserved to be left out.
A storm rose in my chest so violently I had to stand to breathe.
My hands were shaking.
Not from anger. Anger would have been easier, but from the realization that my son was learning to shrink himself to survive a man who couldn't love him properly.
I pulled Liam into my arms.
You're not dramatic, I whispered into his hair. And you will never wait alone in a car again.
Not while I'm alive. The promise left my lips before I understood the weight of it. If only I had known what that promise would cost me. I barely slept that night.
Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Liam sitting in the backseat of Aaron's Tesla, hands tucked under his thighs for warmth, fog on the windows, the world passing by without noticing the small boy trapped inside. By dawn, my decision was no longer a decision.
It was instinct.
I packed Liam's lunch, braided his hair-soft curls away from his face, and drove him to school early. He hugged me a little tighter than usual before running through the gates.
When he disappeared inside, I didn't pull away from the curb.
I just sat there with both hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned pale. 2 hours later, I was standing outside Aaron's downtown apartment, wind slicing through my coat, anger holding my spine straighter than courage ever could. He opened the door shirtless, sipping an energy drink. Behind him, the girlfriend, Haley, lay on the couch scrolling her phone, wrapped in a throw blanket I recognized because I bought it during our last anniversary trip.
Well, he said, smirking, this is a surprise.
Didn't expect you before the custody exchange on Friday. I'm here because of yesterday, I said, my voice steady in a way that scared even me. You left Liam in the car alone.
His smirk didn't even flicker. He was fine. You're being dramatic again. There were security cameras. Climate control was on.
You're welcome, by the way.
I stared at him.
Aaron, he's 7.
And?
He shrugged, brushing past me to toss his empty can in the recycling.
Kids need to toughen up.
You baby him too much. Haley chimed in without looking up. Honestly, Rowan, he does seem a little sensitive.
The world tilted. Sensitive? Sensitive? My son wasn't sensitive. He was gentle. Thoughtful. Soft-hearted in a world that rewarded hardness. And Aaron was trying to sand that softness down because it reminded him too much of me.
You endangered him, I said quietly. And I'm filing for a modification of custody. That made him laugh. Sharp, dismissive, effortless.
On what grounds?
Hurt feelings?
Judges don't care about your theatrics anymore.
You lost that power the day you moved out.
He had always believed he was untouchable.
Charming when he wanted to be, cold when he didn't, and so certain he could twist any narrative in his favor.
But today, something in me finally shifted.
I'm not here to argue, I said, stepping back. I'm here to document.
His smile faltered. Just a hair, but I saw it. The first crack.
He didn't know yet, but this yesterday's cruelty, today's arrogance, was the moment everything began to turn.
For him. For me. For Liam.
I drove straight from Aaron's apartment to the county courthouse. Not to file anything, not yet, but to sit in the parking lot and study the faces of parents walking in and out.
Some were crying. Some were furious.
Some were exhausted in the way only custody battles can exhaust a soul.
I wasn't any of those. Not anymore. I was something colder. Sharper. Focused.
Inside, I requested copies of the custody guidelines, complaint forms, and child welfare documentation standards. The clerk looked at me like she wasn't used to people asking for all three at once.
Going through a divorce? She asked gently. No, I said.
Going through clarity. When I walked out, my phone buzzed, 6 missed calls from Aaron. I watched the screen until it stopped vibrating, then slid the phone into my pocket.
I didn't owe him a reaction. Not today.
By the time I picked Liam up from school, he looked brighter. But when he climbed into the back seat, he hesitated before buckling in. Mama. Yes, baby. Am I too much? It hit me like someone had struck the back of my knees. I turned completely in my seat and cupped his face.
No. You are enough in every way a person can be enough. Don't ever ask that again.
He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me yet. That evening, after dinner, after homework, after tucking him into bed, I opened my laptop and created a new folder titled Case, Hale vs. Hale, Custody Modification. I wasn't impulsive. I wasn't emotional. I was methodical.
First file I uploaded.
Incident report, left unattended for 2 hours, restaurant parking lot.
Second file.
Screenshots of texts Aaron sent me over the past year, minimizing Liam's feelings, calling him soft, saying he needed to man up.
Third file.
A video, one I had never watched until now, of Liam sitting in his dad's car last month while Aaron flirted with Haley in the driveway.
The timestamp showed 47 minutes. I pressed play.
Liam sat perfectly still in the back seat, hugging himself, quietly singing the alphabet the way he did when he was scared. At one point he pressed his face against the window, fogging it with his breath, drawing a tiny heart on the glass. My chest shattered. Not from sadness. From something far more dangerous. Resolve. The next morning, I emailed a child psychologist, Dr. Amelia Cross, one of the best in the county. Her reply came within 20 minutes. Bring him tomorrow. 10 a.m. I'll take care of the evaluation. It was happening. Quietly. Professionally. Undeniably. Aaron had no idea a storm was forming, and this time, it wasn't going to pass. Dr. Amelia Cross's office didn't look like a therapist's office. It looked like a soft sunrise, warm yellow walls, shelves full of dinosaur toys, a beanbag shaped like a turtle. Nothing intimidating. Nothing sharp. Liam stayed glued to my thigh when we first walked in, but Amelia had a way of speaking that made children feel like equals instead of patients. Hey, Liam, she said, squatting to his level. I have a question for you, but it's important. You're the only person who knows the answer. His eyes widened a little. Me. Yep. You. Think you can help me? He nodded slowly. I stepped outside into the hallway while they talked. I could hear muffled voices and the occasional soft laugh. Every time Liam laughed, really laughed, I felt a tiny fracture inside me seal shut. 35 minutes later, Amelia opened the door. Rowan, she said gently. Come in. Liam ran to the turtle beanbag, hugging it like they were lifelong friends. Amelia motioned for me to sit. I'm not allowed to give a formal diagnosis until I finish the full evaluation, she began, but I can tell you what I observed. I braced myself. Your son is emotionally intelligent. Kind. Highly sensitive, not in the negative sense, in the neurological sense. He feels things deeply, learns people's emotions quickly, and adjusts himself to avoid conflict. She paused, letting the words land. Children like Liam, she continued, need safety, predictability, gentle handling. And unfortunately, they are the ones most harmed by dismissive or harsh parenting. My jaw tightened. Her voice softened even more. When I asked him what makes him feel small, he said, when Daddy says I'm dramatic like Mama. I felt my throat close, but I didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of Liam. Amelia slid a form toward me. I'd like to continue sessions with him. And I strongly recommend you pursue additional custody protections. He's showing signs of emotional withdrawal around his father.
I signed without hesitation.
That night, while Liam slept curled against his stuffed elephant, I sat at the kitchen table organizing documents into a polished, time-stamped timeline. I printed photos, cross-referenced messages, and compiled Amelia's early notes. By midnight, the binder was thick enough to make a judge listen. At 1:07 a.m., Aaron finally texted. "Aaron, we need to talk. Aaron, I heard you went to a child shrink. Aaron, don't start something you can't finish." For the first time in years, I smiled at one of his threats. Because he was right. I was starting something I fully intended to finish. What he didn't know was that the finishing wouldn't be mine. It would be his. Aaron didn't wait long to escalate. The next morning, as I was packing Liam's lunch, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. Normally, I never answer those, but something in my gut twisted. "Hello." A voice snapped back, clipped and authoritative. "Ms. Hale? This is Officer Ramirez with Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report that your son is being emotionally manipulated and turned against his father."
My stomach dropped through the floor. Of course.
Aaron's first move was always offense masquerading as defense. "I'm sorry," I said evenly, "but that report is false." Officer Ramirez exhaled like she had heard that line 1,000 times. "We still need to schedule a home visit. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I agreed because refusing only made things worse. When I hung up, I pressed my palms flat against the counter until the trembling stopped. Liam walked in, rubbing his eyes, hair sticking up in soft curls. "Mama." "Yes, baby. Are we okay?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," I whispered. "And we're going to make sure we stay that way." At 9 a.m. sharp, Officer Ramirez knocked. She wasn't unkind, just tired in the way people get when they spend their lives sorting truth from lies. She toured the apartment, asked Liam gentle questions, inspected the fridge, scanned the bookshelf, and took notes while I explained everything calmly, backed with printed timelines, Amelia's letters, and documented incidents. By the end of the visit, her expression had shifted from neutral to something closer to sympathy. "I can't give formal feedback," she said at the door, "but mothers who are hiding something don't usually hand me color-coded binders." When she left, I allowed myself exactly 6 seconds of relief. Then I called my attorney. Her name was Julia Dane, and she didn't believe in soft gloves. I explained everything: Liam waiting in the car, Aaron's dismissiveness, CPS's surprise visit. She didn't gasp. She didn't panic. She only asked one question. "Do you want primary custody or full?" My silence answered her. "Good," she said. "Then you listen to me very carefully. Men like your ex don't panic unless they know they've already lost. His CPS stunt tells me he's terrified you're building a case strong enough to bury him." She paused. "And if we do this right, you will?" For the first time since this began, the fear inside me hardened into something else. Not anger. Not revenge. Authority. A feeling I had never tasted, but one I could get used to. By the time our first custody hearing arrived, Aaron had transformed himself into the performance version of Father of the Year. Clean shave. Pressed suit. Hair styled the way he used to for investor pitches. He walked into the courtroom beside Haley, who wore a soft beige dress, as if neutrality could disguise complicity. But nothing prepared me for what he carried. A thick binder. Almost a twin of mine. He'd taken my strategy and tried to mirror it. He sat across from me, lips curled in a polite, poisoned smile. The kind that said, "I'm still in control." His attorney, slick, young, arrogant, started the opening statement with a rehearsed sigh. "Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned about Ms. Hale's increasing hostility. She's weaponizing their child's sensitivity, influencing him to mistrust his father, and seeking to erase him from Liam's life." My attorney, Julia, did not even blink. She simply crossed her legs, clicked her pen, and murmured, "Weak opening. They are baiting emotion." When it was our turn, Julia stood like a woman carved out of confidence. "Your Honor," she said, "this is not a case of alienation. This is a case of neglect being reframed as conflict. We have timestamps, recordings, evaluations, and a CPS officer prepared to testify to the stability of my client's home." Aaron shifted in his seat. Julia continued, "And we also have an expert child psychologist whose preliminary findings indicate that Liam displays anxiety patterns specifically triggered by interactions with his father." For the first time, Haley looked uncertain,
her fingers tightening around Aaron's arm. The judge turned to me.
Ms. Hale, do you have anything you wish to say?
I stood, feeling Liam's small hand in every beat of my pulse. Yes, Your Honor. My son is gentle, thoughtful, sensitive in the way that makes him kind, not weak. And sensitivity is not a flaw unless someone teaches it to feel like one. I'm not here to punish his father.
I'm here because my son deserves to feel safe, everywhere.
There was silence. Thick, heavy, shifting the room. Julia took over.
We request temporary primary custody pending full evaluation.
Aaron shot up, unable to contain himself. This is insane.
She's making me look like a monster because she's bitter.
Sit down, Mr. Hale, the judge ordered sharply. It was the first time I had ever seen Aaron follow a command immediately.
15 minutes later, the judge delivered the ruling. Temporary primary custody granted to Ms. Rowan Hale. Visitation for Mr. Hale will be supervised until further assessment.
Haley gasped. Aaron's jaw dropped. And I felt nothing like victory. Just a calm, steady certainty. For the first time in my son's life, he was protected.
Supervised visitation was the one phrase Aaron never thought he'd hear in his lifetime.
And it showed.
At every drop-off, every pickup, every 15-minute check-in with the visitation supervisor, he wore the same expression. A man choking on consequences he believed he was immune to. The supervisor, Ms. Trent, mid-50s, fair but strict, logged every minute of every session. Liam would sit stiffly beside her at the designated visitation room, a bright space filled with toys no one touched. During the second session, I watched from the observation window as Aaron tried to hand Liam a bag of fast food. Your favorite, he said with forced sweetness.
Liam looked at Ms. Trent instead. Is it okay? He whispered. She nodded gently.
If you want it.
He hesitated. Not because of the food. Because he didn't trust the giver.
Aaron noticed.
His jaw twitched. His eyes flicked toward the one-way glass like he knew I was there, even though he couldn't see me. That was when the text messages began.
Aaron, you're turning him against me. Aaron, he's afraid of me now.
That's your doing.
Aaron, congratulations.
You win. I didn't respond. Silence is the only language men like him can't twist.
3 weeks later, I met with Dr. Amelia again for Liam's updated evaluation.
She reviewed her notes carefully before speaking.
Rowan, your son has made progress with emotional safety, but his anxiety spikes specifically when he anticipates seeing his father. There's a pattern of conditional affection and dismissiveness that has impacted his sense of worth.
She paused.
And I'm recommending to the court that supervised visitation remain. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle, not with triumph, but with a deep, aching relief. When I opened them again, Amelia was studying me. You're doing this right, she said softly. You're not reacting. You're protecting.
But Aaron? He was reacting to everything. First came the angry voicemails.
Then the long, guilt-laced messages about breaking his family.
And finally, the one that changed everything.
Aaron, if I can't see him alone, then what's the point?
Aaron, maybe I should just step back.
Aaron, maybe he's better off without me.
My breath caught.
This wasn't guilt. It was emotional manipulation, the same tactic he'd used on me throughout our marriage, but now aimed at a 7-year-old child.
And the court needed to know. I forwarded the messages to Julia.
Her response came 5 minutes later. Julia, this is it. Julia, this secures full custody.
Julia, prepare yourself.
His unraveling is beginning.
And it was, faster than anyone expected.
By the next hearing, the man who once believed he could not be touched was about to discover just how wrong he was. The final custody hearing fell on a gray Thursday morning, the kind of morning where the sky feels heavy enough to break. I dressed Liam in his favorite blue sweater, braided his hair gently, kissed the top of his head, and dropped him at school with a promise.
I'll pick you up today.
Early.
He didn't know why. He didn't need to.
He just hugged me tight and whispered, "Okay, Mama." When I walked into the courtroom, Aaron was already there. But he didn't look like the man who once weaponized confidence.
His suit hung loose.
His eyes were ringed with sleepless desperation.
Haley wasn't beside him anymore.
He stood when I entered, as if we were still performing some warped version of marriage etiquette. I walked past him without acknowledgement and took my seat. The judge arrived, and the room settled.
Julia stood, calm, precise, deadly in her composure.
"Your Honor," she began. We are submitting new evidence demonstrating emotional manipulation, neglect patterns, and statements from the father suggesting voluntary withdrawal from parental responsibility. She handed over printed copies of Aaron's texts, the ones where he said maybe Liam was better off without him.
The judge read them slowly, silently,
Then looked up. Mr. Hale, he said, do you wish to explain these messages? Aaron's composure cracked clean in half.
I was upset, he said, voice shaking. She's turning him against me. I can't compete with.
This is not a competition, the judge cut in. This is a child's life.
The silence that followed was suffocating. Julia spoke next.
Your Honor, we request full physical and legal custody for Ms. Hale, with therapeutic visitation for the father only under clinical supervision, to be reinstated gradually if recommended by professionals. The judge turned to me. Ms. Hale, do you have anything to add?
I rose to my feet.
Yes, Your Honor, I said quietly. I don't want to erase his father.
I want to protect my son.
Every child deserves safety, stability, and love without fear. I can't give Liam a perfect life, but I can promise him a safe one.
My voice didn't tremble.
For the first time, not even a little. The judge nodded once.
His ruling took less than 10 seconds.
Full custody granted to Ms. Rowan Hale. Visitation for Mr. Hale will be therapeutic and supervised until further order. Court is adjourned. Aaron collapsed into his chair as if the floor had disappeared beneath him. His attorney closed his folder with the quiet acceptance of defeat.
I walked out of the courtroom without looking back,
because there was nothing behind me worth turning toward. Outside, the air smelled like rain beginning. I drove straight to Liam's school, telling the front desk I needed him early. He ran into my arms, backpack bouncing.
Mama?
Are we okay now?
I knelt and kissed his forehead.
We're more than okay, I whispered. We're safe. He smiled, really smiled, like sunlight breaking through years of clouds. And in that moment, I finally understood.
Protection isn't loud. It isn't violent. It isn't revenge.
It's choosing your child over your fear.
Every single time.
I lifted him into the car, buckled him in, and as we drove home, he hummed softly, no tension in his small shoulders, no fear in his eyes.
The storm behind us had ended. The future ahead was ours.